For the project. So the front row is almost all working diligently. Refugio is ready to work, but he hasn't begun. Do you have your spiral, Jasmine? Okay.
So during my time at HB Lee, you can see me kind of walking around, handing out pieces of lined paper and sharpened pencils that I have at the ready. And this is kind of how I learned to begin class. About 1/3 of the students, particularly the students who struggled with note taking in the first place and being prepared, didn't have these things. And I found that being able to just hand them out without discussion very, very quickly stemmed off a lot of problems and allowed the opening activities to go a lot faster and allowed us all to get started. So this was a preventative management technique that I found worked particularly well in this situation.
Does that say think of? Yes. It does. Do you need to move forward?
Right there is one other management technique that I picked up, which was also always having additional copies of the notes projected on the board for students who had difficulty viewing it from afar or who just because of their own cognitive abilities and needs had to have it closer. And you will see me at the end of this clip kind of bent down with one Brandon Chavez all the way in the back, giving him one-on-one individual attention. And I will say that it was not terribly effective as he did not do any of the notes that day or many days. So this is later that same class. You will hear, that's Jasmine Williams. She is technically helping me quiet down some other students and asking her questions, as she does. And you're going to hear me pull her out of class in a minute or two, which actually seems like a corrective measure, but is really actually a preventative measure. She was kind of freaking out and really amping up. She has behavioral issues. And this was a deal that she and I had worked out where she could come out of class either at my insistence or her own. And then take 5 minutes, get a drink of water, use the bathroom, and then come back, and without us having to move to referrals and class removal and more punitive measures. So this was a preventative measure that really worked pretty well a lot of the time for us throughout my time at HB Lee. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. This was the ubiquitous cell phone. It rang during class. And I think in a classroom that was kind of always on the brink of losing control, I was able to, there it is, ringing. There we go. All right. And I think I nipped it in the bud pretty quickly. As always, in front of middle schoolers, I bemoaned every time I misspoke because they picked up on it so quickly. But I think that as a corrective measure, this worked pretty well. All right, fast forward, same day, same class, one of my bigger corrective failure measures. I have Christian and Brandon in the back, misbehaving as always. And in the middle of my lecture instructions, I ask one of them, I don't specify which one, I say please, to move seats and come up, and I haven't figured out how far I'm going to take it, what the consequences are going to be, and in the end, I just let it go.
Come up here,
No.
please.
I hate being put on the spot.
Christian, I know, and yet I hate having to ask you to stop talking over and over.
I'm not
and over.
talking, you can't.
Okay, one of you needs to come up here.
Rock, paper, scissors.
Brandon, come, please. And you can work with me for a little while.
Rock, paper, scissors, losers go.
Brandon, we're not gonna move on until you come up here.
Which, of course, is completely untrue. We do move on. I think I wait about 15 seconds before doing so. And the next time Brandon chooses to test my authority, which will be later that day or the next day, certainly, I am, unfortunately, one step behind. So that was not one of my finer moments.
It's not gonna be about the things that you want. Yeah, some people cut out cars, they cut out watches, they cut out fancy things. That's where you are going, maybe, but this is about what you bring to school every single day. So today you have you're going to begin your rough draft. Your rough draft is probably going to be on your own sheet of paper just like this. You're sketching it out. You can get up and...
So my last example is myself helping one particular ELL student, sheltered ELL instruction, over the course of a single period. And her name is Nasitu, pretty new to the country, relatively limited reading and writing and particularly note-taking skills. And so this is me kind of at the beginning of the class. I've actually muted it this time, and the class is decently noisy at this part, and I'm kind of helping her individually. And what's interesting to see is that the next part, I'll let you listen to the class, and the noise level changes. So this is the ending of that same day, sixth period, a class that I haven't recorded yet. And this is kind of me walking around. They're working on the same project, remarkably more quietly. It's kind of almost like a day in the life shot. And so I will say as a wrap-up, I was really loath to do this project. You might be able to tell by the fact that it's coming in at the absolute last minute. Partially because I really didn't want to watch myself. Not just watch myself teach, but just have that involvement with my own physical persona. Was pretty nerve-wracking, almost as nerve-wracking it felt like teaching. But as I've gone through the footage, I've noticed things. I noticed that I shush people, and that even at a middle school setting, that doesn't come across in the way that I imagined that it did. I thought of it as a way of not adding to the noise level by adding my own voice, but it's pretty patronizing, and I wouldn't want to be shushed. In addition, there's the good and the bad in a classroom in terms of successful behavior is not always what it feels like when you're teaching. And I've seen kind of, with this video, you get to see what's happening with the kids at the back of the class and the ones who aren't verbally disruptive, but who maybe just aren't paying attention. So it was a really good exercise for that. And again, I think I always try to like to end on a high note. I realized that I, in a way, had more control over the classroom than I gave myself credit for sometimes. I kind of felt like things were always, I was spinning thousands and thousands of tops and barely keeping it together. And so it was really nice for me to kind of reconnect. At this point, the experience was about 6 weeks in the past. I'm well into the high school, and really see what kind of lessons it is that I can bring with me when I return on Monday. One of which is that my high school students will not have me shushing them. I realize that is kind of a cardinal sin. It was also very nice to sort of be able to overhear a little bit more of the middle school conversations that were going on. Obviously when you're trying to manage a classroom for the first time, you're so concerned with squashing extraneous conversation that you don't get to hear what it is that these young, goofy 14, 15, 13-year-olds are talking about. So it was nice to go back and hear, some of the innocence and some of the ridiculousness. On a final note, it was sort of nice to see that I didn't look nearly as intimidated as I sometimes felt. So that's a confidence booster. And, 6 weeks later, it's such a reminder that I do have a lot of affection for these kids, and even the Coreys and the Lamars, and maybe not so much the Brandons. But it's a very nice piece of memory from my time at HB Lee. And so I will send a shout out to the kids for being willing to be filmed.